Have you ever felt completely abandoned when you needed someone the most? Imagine facing the fight of your life, battling a disease that steals your strength, your hope, and your peace, while the people who were supposed to protect you vanish, leaving you alone to endure the storm. Today, I'm going to take you on a journey of pain, courage, and ultimate triumph, a story that proves that even in the darkest moments, when the world seems to have turned its back on you, the human spirit has the power to rise stronger than ever before. This is a story of facing neglect, standing alone against fear, and discovering an inner strength that no one could take away. It's about turning heartbreak into empowerment, weakness into resilience, and abandonment into a force for transformation. And at the very end, a moment arrives that leaves everyone who once doubted speechless. A moment that changes everything and proves that true power is not given, it is earned. Stay with me till the very end, because this is more than just a story. It's a lesson in courage, self-worth, and the unstoppable power of the human heart. By the time it's over, you won't just witness a triumph, you'll feel inspired to reclaim your own strength, no matter what life throws your way. Being diagnosed with cancer is one of the most terrifying experiences anyone can face, and it's even more harrowing when those you expect to lean on vanish the moment you need them most. From the first moment the words, "You have cancer," were spoken, the world felt like it had collapsed into a void where fear and uncertainty dominated every thought. The hospital room, usually filled with the sterile hum of machines and the occasional nurse's footsteps, became a place of profound isolation. Every test, every chemotherapy session, every needle and IV line felt heavier, knowing that the people who were supposed to offer comfort, guidance, and love were nowhere to be found. Visits that were promised never came, calls went unanswered, and messages asking for support were ignored. There was a bitter, gnawing pain that cut deeper than the disease itself. The realization that those who should have been anchors were the first to drift away. Watching others around me receive care, hugs, and the simple warmth of family while I was left in silence created a storm of emotions that was impossible to articulate. The empty chair at the bedside became a symbol of betrayal, a constant reminder that love was conditional and that parental devotion could evaporate when tested. Each treatment session brought a new layer of fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of the disease progressing, fear of the isolation that seemed to stretch endlessly. Nights were the hardest. The quiet moments alone magnified the sense of abandonment, and every whispered hope for someone to be there to hold a hand or share a reassuring smile went unanswered. Despite the crushing weight of loneliness, there was a spark of realization forming, a recognition that survival depended not on the presence of others but on the strength within. The physical pain of treatment became entwined with the emotional torment of neglect, but it also forged an unexpected resilience. Each day spent navigating this ordeal without parental support became a testament to endurance, highlighting the depth of self-reliance and inner strength that would be required not only to fight the disease, but to rise above the emotional scars it left behind. It was in this crucible of suffering and abandonment that the awareness began to crystallize. The path to triumph would not be handed by those who had forsaken me, but would be carved through courage, perseverance, and an unwavering determination to reclaim dignity and respect. The absence of parental support during the most critical moments of life creates a wound that is both deep and enduring. When a child is facing a life-threatening illness like cancer, there is an inherent expectation that parents will step forward, not just as caregivers, but as emotional anchors, advocates, and sources of unconditional love. Their absence, therefore, is more than just physical. It is a profound emotional void that reshapes every perception of trust, family, and security. Each missed visit, each unanswered call, each silence in response to cries for help became a tangible reminder of betrayal. The hospital, meant to be a place of healing, instead became a theater of abandonment, where the harsh reality of neglect played out day after day. It wasn't just the chemotherapy sessions, the surgeries, or the endless tests that were unbearable. It was the knowledge that those who were supposed to fight alongside me had chosen to turn away. There was an agonizing combination of anger and sadness, the kind that pierces quietly at first but eventually grows into a relentless storm. Memories of parental promises and reassurances, now unfulfilled, seemed to echo mockingly in the sterile hallways, highlighting the stark contrast between expectation and reality. Even the smallest gestures of care from friends, nurses, or distant relatives served only to magnify the absence of parental involvement, emphasizing the emotional chasm that had been created. The isolation was not merely about being physically alone, it was about feeling invisible to the people whose presence should have mattered most. Every moment of suffering was compounded by the gnawing sense of being unworthy of love, of being left to face the most terrifying journey of life, without guidance or comfort. Yet within this cruelty, a shift began to occur. The neglect, as painful as it was, forced a confrontation with inner strength that might otherwise have remained dormant. The realization emerged that dependence on others, even parents, was unreliable, and that true survival required embracing self-reliance and resilience. The very act of enduring without support began to transform fear into determination and abandonment into fuel for personal empowerment. It became clear that the void left by those who should have been present could not define the outcome of the struggle. In fact, it became the catalyst for developing a fortitude so resolute that it would eventually turn the narrative of neglect into one of triumph, proving that even in the shadow of parental absence, strength and dignity could emerge unshaken and unstoppable. The emotional impact of feeling abandoned during treatment is a weight that presses on every aspect of life, reshaping how trust, love, and family are understood. Facing cancer is not merely a battle with the body, it is an assault on the mind and spirit, and when the people who should offer unwavering support disappear, the pain multiplies in ways that are almost impossible to articulate. Each hospital visit, each round of chemotherapy, each sleepless night became a vivid reminder that the foundation of family could crumble under pressure. There is a profound sense of disbelief that those who vowed to care, protect, and nurture could vanish at the precise moment their presence was most essential. This absence creates not only a sense of isolation but a deep questioning of self-worth, leaving one to grapple with why love and protection seemed conditional, why devotion could be so easily withdrawn. Every treatment, every procedure, every fear faced alone reinforced the harsh reality that abandonment is a silent, insidious form of suffering, one that cuts deeper than physical pain and lingers long after hospital walls fade from memory. The heartache of this neglect is compounded by anger and confusion, emotions that coexist in a volatile mix that refuses to settle. The mind constantly cycles through what ifs and why me, replaying moments where support was expected but never delivered. Even small gestures from others, though welcome, cannot erase the absence of those whose presence should have been most impactful. The emptiness left behind is not simply about being alone in a hospital room. It is about facing the most vulnerable moments of life without the emotional scaffolding that makes enduring hardship possible. Over time, this abandonment begins to shape coping mechanisms, forcing a confrontation with inner strength and resilience that might never have been tested otherwise. It teaches the painful, yet transformative lesson that survival cannot rely solely on external validation or comfort, and that the most profound courage emerges when one faces adversity alone. While the initial impact is devastating, the emotional isolation ultimately becomes a crucible, refining determination, fostering self-reliance, and igniting a quiet but unstoppable resolve. Through this process, the trauma of abandonment evolves into a source of empowerment, creating a foundation for personal triumph, inner confidence, and the realization that strength is not measured by who stands beside you, but by the courage you summon to stand for yourself in the absence of anyone else. Feeling betrayed by those expected to care the most is an emotional wound that cuts far deeper than any physical pain. When a life-threatening illness like cancer strikes, the instinct is to turn to the people who are supposed to love unconditionally, to find reassurance, comfort, and guidance in their presence. Yet, when those expectations are shattered, the sense of betrayal is overwhelming and disorienting. It is not just the absence of help or support that hurts, but the realization that trust has been misplaced and that the very people who are meant to provide safety and stability have abandoned their role. Every hospital visit, every medication administered, every difficult conversation with doctors or nurses is shadowed by the emptiness left by this betrayal, and each moment magnifies the depth of the emotional wound. The juxtaposition of the physical vulnerability inherent in treatment with the emotional neglect from parents or guardians creates a profound sense of isolation, where pain is doubled and hope seems increasingly fragile. One begins to question the very nature of relationships and family bonds, wondering how love can be so conditional and how promises of care can vanish when they are needed the most. The betrayal does not just affect the immediate experience of illness, it seeps into every thought, shaping the way one perceives support, loyalty, and even one's own self-worth. Anger and grief intermingle in ways that are exhausting, sometimes boiling over in tears, sometimes building silently like a storm behind the chest, each heartbeat a reminder of what has been lost. There is also a creeping fear that the world itself is untrustworthy, that dependence on others is a risk that can end in abandonment. Yet paradoxically, this betrayal becomes a catalyst for growth and resilience. It forces a reckoning with one's own strength and the realization that survival cannot rely on the care of others. The pain of being forsaken ignites determination, transforming hurt into motivation to prove that neglect will not define the outcome of one's life. The sense of betrayal sharpens awareness, hones resolve, and builds an inner fortress of self-reliance. It teaches lessons about discernment, independence, and the necessity of finding courage within oneself. Ultimately, what begins as a devastating breach of trust evolves into a source of empowerment, shaping a person who understands that the greatest loyalty and care can come from within, and that even in the face of abandonment, one can rise stronger, wiser, and unbroken. Hospital scenes showing isolation and loneliness can be some of the most vivid and haunting memories for someone battling a serious illness, especially when support from family is absent. The sterile, echoing corridors, the constant beeping of machines, and the faint smell of antiseptic create a cold backdrop against which every emotion is intensified. Lying in a hospital bed, staring at the ceiling or the harsh fluorescent lights, the sense of being utterly alone can feel suffocating. While doctors and nurses perform their duties with professionalism, the personal connection that is meant to provide comfort is missing when those closest to you are absent. Each visitor who passes by with their own family or friends serves as a stark reminder of the companionship and care that should have been there, amplifying the feeling of isolation. Even routine procedures, simple check-ins, and moments of vulnerability become reminders of the void left by those expected to provide love and guidance. The waiting rooms, filled with chatter and laughter from families supporting their loved ones, only deepen the emotional chasm. The subtle gestures that often bring comfort, a hand on the shoulder, a whispered word of encouragement, a familiar smile, are painfully absent, leaving the patient to face fear, pain, and uncertainty alone. The loneliness is not only physical but emotional. The mind spirals through moments of doubt, fear, and longing for connection that remains unfulfilled. Nights in particular are the hardest, when silence reigns and the absence of a familiar presence is felt more acutely. The coldness of hospital sheets, the hum of machines, and the rhythm of IV drips underscore the solitude. It is in these moments that the emotional resilience of the patient is tested most severely. The stark environment magnifies every ache, every pang of fatigue, and every whisper of anxiety. Yet paradoxically, the hospital's isolating atmosphere can also become a crucible for inner strength. Being forced to navigate vulnerability, discomfort, and the fear of the unknown without the expected support cultivates self-reliance, awareness, and mental fortitude. The starkness of isolation sharpens the appreciation for small victories. Each completed treatment and each day endured becomes a personal triumph. Though the emptiness is profound, it also fosters a realization that true strength can emerge in solitude, and that surviving adversity often requires learning to stand alone, even when the world seems to have turned away. Struggling with physical pain and emotional neglect simultaneously is an experience that magnifies every suffering a person endures. Cancer alone brings a relentless assault on the body, with chemotherapy, radiation, surgeries, and countless tests leaving one weak, exhausted, and in constant discomfort. Every injection, every procedure, and every bout of nausea or fatigue becomes a vivid reminder of the fragility of the human body. Yet, when this physical torment is compounded by the absence of those who are supposed to provide care and comfort, the pain deepens in ways that are almost impossible to describe. The hospital bed, meant to be a place of healing, instead becomes a stage where loneliness and vulnerability dominate. There is no gentle hand to soothe a trembling arm, no reassuring voice to calm the fear that rises with each unexpected side effect, no familiar presence to share the burden of despair. Each moment of agony is intensified because the mind craves empathy and connection that is withheld, leaving the individual to navigate both bodily suffering and the crushing weight of abandonment alone. Emotional neglect transforms routine moments of pain into profound battles with despair, forcing the patient to confront fear, anxiety, and isolation without guidance or support. Even the most resilient spirits are tested as loneliness becomes almost a physical presence, pressing down alongside the medical pain, making every movement, every breath, and every thought heavier. Yet within this duality of suffering, a different kind of awareness begins to emerge, a recognition that survival and strength must come from within. The absence of external support, though painful, creates a space for self-reliance, for learning to endure both the body's attacks and the mind's torments. It is a crucible where resilience is forged, where determination becomes sharper because there is no one to lean on, and where inner courage becomes the primary tool for survival. Every small victory, completing a treatment, enduring a sleepless night, surviving a wave of pain, takes on monumental significance because it is achieved without the expected support system. The combination of physical and emotional suffering teaches lessons that are difficult, raw, and transformative. It emphasizes the power of the human spirit to persist in the face of compounded adversity, proving that even when abandoned and in pain, one can endure, adapt, and find an inner reservoir of strength capable of defying both illness and neglect. The realization that self-reliance is necessary for survival is a turning point that often emerges in the harshest circumstances, particularly when faced with life-threatening illness and the absence of expected support. When cancer strikes and the people who should provide guidance, comfort, and care are nowhere to be found, a profound awakening occurs. Survival cannot depend on the presence or approval of others. It becomes clear that no amount of longing for assistance or yearning for empathy can change the reality of abandonment, and the only path forward is to cultivate strength from within. This realization begins subtly, often through small moments of necessity. Learning to manage medications alone, navigating hospital appointments without guidance, or enduring painful treatments without anyone to hold a hand. Each of these instances, initially fraught with fear and uncertainty, gradually becomes evidence of one's own capability. The absence of support, while deeply painful, forces a confrontation with one's own resilience, creativity, and resourcefulness. There is an unspoken lesson in every solitary challenge. The body and mind are far more capable than previously believed, and relying on internal strength is not just a choice but a lifeline. The process of embracing self-reliance is neither immediate nor easy. It is accompanied by moments of doubt, frustration, and grief for the care that should have been provided. Yet, slowly, a new framework of survival emerges, one that centers personal agency, determination, and accountability. Independence transforms from a necessity into a source of empowerment. No longer tethered to the whims of those who abandon trust, one begins to discover the immense value of self-trust, discipline, and emotional fortitude. The realization also brings clarity. Survival is not about revenge or proving others wrong. It is about reclaiming control over one's life, health, and destiny. Each successful action, no matter how small, reinforces the understanding that the capacity to endure lies within, and that reliance on others, though comforting, is not essential. This mindset shifts the narrative from victimhood to empowerment, turning the pain of neglect into motivation and personal growth. By internalizing the principle of self-reliance, one not only survives the physical and emotional toll of illness, but emerges stronger, more resilient, and equipped to face future challenges with confidence, dignity, and an unwavering belief in one's own ability to endure and triumph despite any abandonment or adversity. The moment when parents attempt to reconnect late in the process is often fraught with tension, confusion, and conflicting emotions. After weeks or months of absence, when the illness has already tested every limit of endurance, their sudden appearances feel jarring, almost surreal, as if trying to step into a story that has already been written without them. There is a mixture of relief, skepticism, and guarded hope, because while their presence might promise comfort, it also carries the weight of past neglect. Every gesture, whether a hesitant touch, a tentative word, or an awkward attempt at conversation, is loaded with meaning, scrutinized for sincerity, and measured against the reality of the abandonment that has already caused deep wounds. The patient may struggle to reconcile the longing for parental love with the anger and disappointment built over weeks of being left alone during treatments that were frightening, painful, and isolating. It is a complicated emotional landscape, where forgiveness is not automatic, and trust must be earned, not assumed. Observing their return, one cannot help but notice the timing, the disparity between when care was needed most and when it is finally offered, and the subtle dynamics of power and accountability begin to shift. The presence of the parents at this late stage may feel performative or reactive, intended more to alleviate guilt than to provide genuine support, and this realization often fuels a quiet resolve to maintain emotional autonomy. Each attempt at closeness or reconciliation is met with an internal assessment: will allowing them in heal the wounds, or will it reopen them, highlighting what was lost? The patient becomes acutely aware of the contrast between the early days of abandonment, filled with fear, isolation, and self-reliance, and this sudden, delayed involvement, and this contrast reinforces a sense of personal strength. The absence forced independence, endurance, and the cultivation of inner resilience, and now their return, while emotionally complex, underscores the fact that survival and growth have not been dependent on their support. In fact, the delay highlights the power of self-reliance and determination, showing that triumph is achieved not because of those who abandoned, but despite them. It is in this delicate interplay of emotion, observation, and reflection that a deeper understanding emerges. Empowerment comes not from the belated presence of others, but from the realization that one's own courage, perseverance, and resilience were enough to carry through the darkest times, and that acknowledgement or apology from those who abandoned is secondary to the strength already earned through endurance. Building inner strength while fighting cancer is a journey that tests every layer of human resilience, forcing a confrontation with both physical vulnerability and emotional turbulence. The disease itself attacks the body relentlessly, leaving it weak, drained, and often in constant pain. But the true challenge lies in maintaining mental and emotional fortitude in the midst of such trials. Every treatment session, from chemotherapy to radiation, becomes more than just a medical procedure. It is a crucible that tests patience, endurance, and the capacity to persevere. When support from family is absent or minimal, the burden of navigating this journey alone amplifies the weight of each challenge, compelling the individual to dig deeper within themselves for courage and determination. Inner strength begins to take shape as a combination of self-reliance, mindfulness, and deliberate focus on small victories. Each completed treatment, each day survived despite exhaustion and fear, reinforces the realization that the ability to endure resides within. This process is gradual and often nonlinear. Moments of doubt, fear, and despair arise, but they coexist alongside instances of empowerment, where resilience manifests in ways that were previously unrecognized. Emotional fortitude becomes a muscle that grows stronger with every obstacle overcome. As the mind learns to manage pain, anticipate challenges, and cultivate hope even in the face of uncertainty. The journey of fighting cancer also illuminates the value of perspective, understanding that while physical suffering is temporary, the strength forged through endurance has lasting impact. The absence of external support, though painful, paradoxically accelerates the development of this inner power, highlighting the human capacity to thrive even when left to confront adversity alone. Over time, inner strength becomes more than just a survival mechanism. It transforms into a source of identity, confidence, and empowerment. The individual begins to recognize that triumph over illness is not merely about medical recovery, but about mastering fear, cultivating resilience, and embracing personal agency. This strength allows one to face not only the ongoing challenges of treatment, but also the emotional scars left by neglect, abandonment, or indifference from those who should have been present. In essence, the act of enduring illness without adequate support becomes an affirmation of self-sufficiency and courage, proving that even in the harshest circumstances, one can cultivate a reservoir of inner strength capable of sustaining hope, dignity, and the determination to overcome every obstacle with grace and unwavering resolve. The idea of revenge through personal triumph and success is a powerful motivator, especially when someone has been abandoned or mistreated by those who were expected to care the most. In the context of battling a serious illness like cancer, the notion of revenge does not mean causing harm to others, but rather reclaiming control and demonstrating strength through achievement, resilience, and self-empowerment. When parents or loved ones fail to provide support during critical moments, the natural response is often a mix of anger, hurt, and a desire for acknowledgement, and channeling these emotions into personal growth can become the most profound form of retribution. Every successful step taken, whether enduring a grueling treatment, achieving a milestone in recovery, or maintaining composure in the face of neglect, becomes a statement. Abandonment does not define the outcome of one's life, and neglect cannot diminish intrinsic value or potential. Personal triumph becomes the vehicle through which pain is transformed into purpose, allowing the individual to rise above the limitations imposed by others' indifference. The journey of success, fueled by determination and resilience, not only strengthens the person internally, but also commands recognition from those who once doubted, ignored, or abandoned them. In this sense, the revenge is subtle but profound. It is the act of thriving in spite of adversity, of turning betrayal into a catalyst for empowerment, and of proving that external neglect cannot override internal strength. This kind of triumph resonates deeply because it is earned, it is not dependent on luck, circumstance, or the goodwill of others. Each accomplishment, no matter how small, becomes a building block in a larger narrative of victory over both illness and emotional trauma. Moreover, framing success as a form of revenge shifts the focus from resentment to action, encouraging strategic, intentional growth rather than destructive behavior. It emphasizes the power of agency, demonstrating that one can assert influence over life outcomes even when others have failed to fulfill their roles. This form of revenge is enduring and dignified. It does not erode the self or perpetuate cycles of harm, but instead transforms suffering into strength and adversity into achievement. Ultimately, using personal triumph as revenge illustrates a profound truth. The most powerful retribution is not confrontation or retaliation, but the quiet, unstoppable demonstration of one's own resilience, capabilities, and unwavering commitment to survive, thrive, and rise above the limitations imposed by neglect, abandonment, and the failures of those who are supposed to care. Observing the reactions of absent or neglectful parents becomes an unexpected source of insight and, in some ways, empowerment, particularly when their child begins to demonstrate resilience and strength in the face of adversity. After weeks or months of abandonment during a critical illness like cancer, there is a subtle but intense curiosity about how those who chose not to act will respond when they witness the courage and determination that has been cultivated independently. Every moment of visible strength, the completion of a difficult treatment, the calm endurance of pain, or the confident handling of decisions regarding one's health, becomes a silent message that the individual has not only survived but has grown stronger without their aid. The reactions of parents or family members, often a mixture of surprise, guilt, and unease, reveal the depth of the impact that their neglect has had, not only on the relationship, but also on the perception of authority and control they once held. Observing these reactions allows the individual to reclaim power in a subtle yet profound way. Where previously there may have been fear or dependence, the absence of support has now created an opportunity for self-assertion. The parent's speechlessness or awkward attempts at reconnection serve as a mirror, reflecting the effectiveness of the resilience and inner strength that has been forged through adversity. It is a quiet form of triumph that does not require confrontation or harsh words, yet communicates volumes about endurance, self-sufficiency, and the transformation of pain into empowerment. Each reaction observed becomes a confirmation that the struggle endured alone has produced not only survival but personal growth, confidence, and the ability to command respect without demanding it. The emotional satisfaction derived from this observation is profound because it reframes the narrative. Neglect and abandonment, which were intended to weaken or control, have instead highlighted the capacity for independence, maturity, and self-determination. It also allows the individual to measure the contrast between expectation and reality, seeing clearly that the strength within surpasses the absence of support without needing external validation. Ultimately, witnessing the reactions of those who once abandoned you is less about revenge in the traditional sense and more about the affirmation of self-worth, resilience, and triumph. It is an acknowledgement that the hardships faced alone have created a foundation of power and confidence that no absence or neglect can undermine, and that personal strength, cultivated through endurance and courage, becomes the most undeniable statement of all. When emotional manipulation attempts by parents are ignored, it marks a critical turning point in reclaiming autonomy and reinforcing personal boundaries. Parents who were absent during a time of intense vulnerability may later try to assert influence or guilt in an effort to reestablish control, to soothe their own conscience, or to elicit sympathy. These attempts can take many forms: expressions of exaggerated concern, reminders of past hardships, promises of future support, or veiled accusations that subtly imply blame for strained relationships. Each attempt is designed to provoke an emotional response, to test the resilience that has been cultivated during the period of abandonment. Yet, when these manipulations are recognized and consciously ignored, they lose power. The individual begins to understand that responding to guilt or pressure only reinforces dependency, while refusal to engage signals strength, self-respect, and control over one's own narrative. Ignoring manipulative behavior does not mean a lack of awareness; rather, it requires acute emotional intelligence to recognize patterns, identify motives, and maintain composure in the face of provocation. This process is transformative because it shifts the locus of power from the manipulator back to the person who has endured neglect. Every ignored attempt is a reaffirmation of independence, a silent declaration that external pressure will not dictate emotions or decisions, and that personal boundaries are non-negotiable. Over time, the consistent choice to not react cultivates inner peace, resilience, and a heightened sense of self-worth, while simultaneously neutralizing the manipulator's influence. It also allows the individual to focus energy on constructive actions, such as recovery, personal growth, and building supportive networks, rather than being drawn into cycles of guilt, conflict, or emotional dependence. Recognizing and disregarding manipulative attempts is not an act of vengeance in the conventional sense. It is a deliberate assertion of agency that transforms past pain into empowerment. The act of maintaining composure and refusing to engage in emotional coercion demonstrates maturity, clarity, and strength, highlighting the contrast between those who sought to control and the one who refused to be controlled. Ultimately, by ignoring these attempts, the individual asserts that survival, recovery, and personal triumph are determined not by the manipulations of others, but by one's own courage, perseverance, and commitment to self-respect, turning what was intended as control into an opportunity to reinforce autonomy, dignity, and inner strength. Planning a response that is calm but devastatingly impactful requires a delicate balance of restraint, strategy, and emotional intelligence. When someone has endured neglect or abandonment, particularly during a life-threatening illness like cancer, there is often a desire to express the depth of hurt, frustration, and betrayal in a way that cannot be ignored. However, impulsive reactions or overt displays of anger can diminish the power of the response, leaving it lost in emotional chaos rather than making a meaningful impression. Instead, the most effective response is carefully considered, measured, and delivered with precision, allowing its weight to resonate far more than words spoken in haste. This kind of response is built upon reflection, understanding what needs to be communicated, anticipating the reactions of those who abandoned or neglected, and crafting a statement that is succinct yet loaded with meaning. The calmness in delivery is crucial because it contrasts sharply with the turmoil and chaos of the past, creating a striking moment that commands attention. The impact comes not from aggression, but from clarity, confidence, and the knowledge that the response is rooted in truth and personal experience. Every gesture, tone, and choice of words is intentional, designed to convey the gravity of past neglect while asserting self-respect and autonomy. This process requires introspection, as the individual must sift through emotions, decide which truths are necessary to express and which can be left unspoken, allowing the silence itself to carry weight. The devastating impact lies in the combination of honesty, precision, and emotional control. It is a response that leaves little room for deflection, excuses, or denial, compelling those on the receiving end to confront the reality of their actions. Importantly, this approach transforms potential vulnerability into empowerment, demonstrating that control over the narrative now rests firmly with the one who has endured. The calm, deliberate delivery reinforces the message that personal strength has been forged in adversity, and that triumph is achieved not through confrontation or retaliation, but through the unwavering assertion of dignity and self-worth. Planning such a response is an exercise in patience, strategy, and self-awareness, turning the pain of neglect into a tool for establishing boundaries, communicating truth, and delivering a message that is both powerful and unforgettable. It embodies the principle that the most effective form of retribution often lies in composure, clarity, and the quiet confidence of someone who has endured hardship and emerged stronger than those who once abandoned them. The significance of a short, precise forward response lies in its ability to convey immense meaning with brevity, creating a moment of emotional power that lingers far longer than a lengthy explanation ever could. In situations of betrayal or neglect, particularly during a vulnerable period such as a serious illness, words often fail to fully capture the depth of pain, resilience, and self-assertion that has been cultivated through hardship. A carefully chosen forward statement distills all of that emotion into a concentrated form, allowing it to strike with clarity and precision. The brevity itself commands attention because it contrasts sharply with the overwhelming complexity of the experience it represents, creating a moment that is both shocking and unforgettable for those who hear it. Each word carries weight, carefully selected to communicate not only the reality of abandonment or betrayal, but also the strength, dignity, and self-possession that have arisen in response. The listener is forced to confront the full impact of past neglect without the opportunity to dismiss, deflect, or rationalize their behavior, making the statement devastatingly effective. Additionally, the simplicity of a forward response leaves space for reflection, allowing the meaning to expand in the mind of the audience long after it has been spoken. It transforms the act of speaking into a form of quiet but undeniable empowerment, demonstrating that the individual is no longer defined by the absence or actions of others, but by their own clarity, resolve, and inner strength. The response also serves as a symbolic culmination of the journey endured. The weeks or months of pain, isolation, and self-reliance are condensed into a single, unassailable declaration. In many ways, its impact lies as much in what is left unsaid as in the words themselves, emphasizing restraint, thoughtfulness, and intentionality. By limiting the response to 4 words, the individual asserts control over both the narrative and the emotional exchange, ensuring that the moment is memorable, authoritative, and self-affirming. The power of a short, precise statement is timeless. It encapsulates triumph over neglect, communicates unshakable self-worth, and delivers a lasting impression that words spoken in anger or desperation could never achieve. This approach demonstrates that strength often lies not in volume, but in focus, intention, and the ability to let meaning resonate with quiet, undeniable authority. The forward response becomes a profound symbol of empowerment and closure, representing the culmination of an intense journey through pain, neglect, and self-discovery. Its significance extends far beyond the simplicity of its words. It embodies the emotional strength, resilience, and clarity that have been forged in the crucible of abandonment and hardship. When someone has been left alone during a life-threatening illness like cancer, every day becomes a test of endurance, and every act of self-reliance contributes to the creation of an inner fortress of confidence. By the time this response is delivered, it carries not just the weight of lived experience but the quiet authority of someone who has endured suffering without compromise and emerged stronger. The 4 words function as a concentrated declaration, cutting through excuses, guilt, or defensiveness and leaving no room for misinterpretation. Unlike long explanations that can be diluted by emotion or lost in the complexity of speech, this brief statement crystallizes the truth in a manner that is undeniable, precise, and unforgettable. It is both a shield and a shield that protects personal dignity and autonomy, and a sword that pierces through the facades or attempts at justification from those who caused harm. Each word is deliberately chosen, carrying layered meaning that reflects the depth of experience and the lessons learned through neglect and adversity. The response does not need to be harsh, confrontational, or vindictive to have impact. Its power lies in the contrast between the calm composure of the speaker and the gravity of what those words represent. It communicates that the individual is no longer a passive recipient of others' choices or failures, but an active agent of their own life, capable of reclaiming respect, asserting boundaries, and demonstrating strength without compromise. Moreover, the 4-word response acts as a form of closure, signaling that the chapter of suffering imposed by neglect is complete, and that the speaker has moved beyond the need for external validation or apology. It allows the individual to reclaim emotional sovereignty, turning a painful experience into an affirmation of resilience and self-worth. In essence, this response embodies the ultimate proof of transformation. It is a concise, powerful testament to survival, courage, and the enduring ability to turn abandonment into empowerment, leaving a lasting impression that resonates far beyond the moment of delivery. The reaction of family members or witnesses to the forward response is a critical moment that underscores the impact of resilience, empowerment, and unspoken authority. When someone delivers a statement so concise yet so loaded with meaning, the immediate response of those observing is often a mixture of shock, disbelief, and awe. Family members who were present during periods of neglect or abandonment may find themselves suddenly confronted with the undeniable evidence of strength that has developed independently of their support. Their initial reactions may range from wide-eyed silence to hesitant expressions of guilt, as they process the fact that the individual before them has endured hardship, fought serious illness, and emerged not only surviving but thriving. Witnesses outside the immediate family, such as friends, hospital staff, or extended relatives, may experience a different but equally potent response: respect, admiration, and even a sense of reverence for the composure and dignity displayed. The brevity of the statement amplifies its effect, leaving room for the listener's minds to fill in the emotional context, replaying the journey of struggle, isolation, and perseverance that led to this defining moment. In some cases, the silence that follows can feel almost tangible, a collective recognition that words alone cannot capture the magnitude of the experience or the depth of the personal strength demonstrated. Observing this reaction can also serve as a form of subtle vindication for the individual who has endured neglect, highlighting the contrast between those who abandoned them and the self-sufficiency they cultivated in response. There is a profound sense of control that comes from seeing others absorb the weight of one's truth without argument, defense, or deflection. Their reactions validate the power of restraint, intentionality, and clarity in communication, proving that the most effective statements do not need to be loud, confrontational, or lengthy to make a lasting impression. Furthermore, the reactions of family members and witnesses can crystallize the speaker's own sense of triumph, as it demonstrates that perseverance, courage, and dignity resonate beyond personal experience and can command acknowledgement even from those who initially failed to offer support. In essence, witnessing the stunned or reflective responses of others transforms a simple act of verbal assertion into a shared moment of recognition, amplifying the impact of the forward response and reinforcing the enduring message that resilience, self-respect, and inner strength can leave a lasting mark on everyone who observes them. The protagonist's confidence in standing up after years of neglect represents a pivotal moment of transformation, where the cumulative pain, isolation, and adversity experienced during illness are transformed into empowerment and self-assurance. When someone has endured abandonment, particularly during a critical period such as cancer treatment, the natural response might initially be fear, hesitation, or self-doubt. The absence of support from those expected to provide care can leave deep emotional scars, creating a sense of vulnerability that lingers long after the immediate crisis has passed. However, as resilience develops and self-reliance is strengthened through necessity, a new sense of confidence emerges, one grounded not in external validation, but in the undeniable evidence of personal endurance and capability. Standing up after years of neglect is more than a physical act; it is a symbolic declaration of autonomy, a visible assertion that one is no longer constrained by the limitations imposed by others' absence or indifference. This confidence is built on the foundation of having faced profound challenges alone and having succeeded despite them, a realization that instills both pride and a sense of invincibility. The act of confronting those who once neglected or abandoned the individual can evoke a mix of emotions: satisfaction, calm defiance, and quiet triumph. Confidence at this stage is also reinforced by the awareness that survival and self-worth are self-determined, not contingent on the care, approval, or recognition of others. The very posture, tone, and presence of someone who has reclaimed their dignity communicates volumes, often without the need for extended explanation or confrontation. It signals maturity, emotional intelligence, and the strength that comes from enduring hardship and emerging stronger. This confidence has a ripple effect. It not only shifts the dynamic with those who failed to support but also empowers the individual to face future challenges with poise and resilience. It becomes a tangible embodiment of transformation, demonstrating that neglect and adversity, while painful, can catalyze the development of inner strength, self-assurance, and courage. Ultimately, standing up after years of neglect illustrates that true empowerment is not reactive but earned, rooted in the perseverance through suffering, the cultivation of self-respect, and the deliberate choice to assert agency and dignity, proving that one's life, voice, and identity are governed by personal strength rather than the failures of others. The contrast between weakness imposed by abandonment and newfound strength is a profound and transformative experience, illustrating the journey from vulnerability to empowerment. When someone is abandoned during a critical period, such as serious illness or personal crisis, the initial impact is often a sense of helplessness, fear, and deep emotional pain. The absence of care, support, or empathy creates a void that amplifies feelings of inadequacy and isolation, leaving the individual to face challenges that should have been shared with loved ones entirely alone. This imposed weakness is not only emotional, but can also manifest physically, as stress, anxiety, and fear weaken resilience and make even everyday challenges feel insurmountable. The mind and body respond to neglect with heightened vulnerability, reinforcing the perception that one is unprotected and powerless in the face of adversity. Yet, it is precisely within this crucible of abandonment that the seeds of newfound strength begin to take root. Forced to navigate difficult circumstances independently, the individual discovers the capacity for endurance, self-reliance, and courage that may have otherwise remained untapped. Each obstacle overcome, whether medical, emotional, or logistical, becomes evidence that survival does not rely on external support, but on internal fortitude. This journey highlights the remarkable plasticity of human strength. What begins as weakness imposed by neglect gradually evolves into resilience earned through perseverance. The contrast between past vulnerability and current empowerment becomes starkly apparent as the individual begins to assert control over their own life, make decisions with confidence, and face challenges with a sense of agency that was previously unimaginable. Where abandonment once elicited despair and fear, the cultivated strength now fosters calm, determination, and clarity of purpose. Observing this transformation reinforces the understanding that weakness is not permanent, and that adversity, even when imposed by those who should care, can catalyze personal growth. The journey from helplessness to strength also serves as a form of indirect vindication, demonstrating that the failures of others to provide support do not define the outcome of one's life. In essence, the contrast between imposed weakness and newfound strength is both a measure of survival and a testament to the human capacity for resilience, illustrating that the challenges and betrayals encountered along the way can ultimately lead to empowerment, self-mastery, and an unshakable sense of personal agency. Reflecting on lessons learned from parental neglect is a profound and often transformative process, revealing insights about resilience, self-worth, and the nature of relationships that can shape a lifetime. When parents fail to provide support during critical periods, such as serious illness or personal crises, the immediate impact is often confusion, anger, and heartbreak. Over time, however, these experiences become a lens through which one can examine not only the behavior of others, but also one's own responses, strengths, and growth. One of the primary lessons is the recognition that love and care, while ideally unconditional, can sometimes be unreliable, and that placing absolute dependence on others can leave one vulnerable to disappointment and pain. This awareness encourages the development of self-reliance, the ability to meet one's own needs, and the cultivation of internal sources of comfort and motivation. Another lesson lies in understanding boundaries, recognizing which relationships are nurturing and which are toxic, and learning to protect oneself from further emotional harm. The experience of neglect also teaches discernment, helping to distinguish genuine empathy and support from superficial gestures or empty promises, which fosters stronger, more intentional connections with those who truly care. Additionally, these experiences highlight the importance of emotional resilience and adaptability, demonstrating that even in the absence of expected support, one can endure, recover, and thrive. Reflection also brings clarity about the limits of control. While one cannot dictate the actions or choices of others, one can control responses, attitudes, and the direction of one's own life. This empowers individuals to reclaim agency and assert independence in ways that affirm dignity and self-worth. Importantly, the lessons learned are not solely about caution or self-protection. They are also about transformation. Experiencing neglect can catalyze profound personal growth, instilling empathy for others who suffer, a deeper understanding of human complexity, and a commitment to living authentically despite adversity. There is also a lesson in forgiveness, not necessarily for the sake of those who caused harm, but as a means of releasing lingering resentment and reclaiming emotional freedom. Ultimately, reflecting on these lessons allows one to reframe the narrative of abandonment, turning it into a source of strength, wisdom, and empowerment, proving that even experiences of profound neglect can yield insights that shape a resilient, confident, and self-assured life. Using the situation as motivation to succeed beyond expectations transforms pain and neglect into a powerful driving force that fuels achievement and personal growth. When someone has been abandoned or left unsupported during critical moments, particularly during a life-threatening illness like cancer, the initial response may be despair, confusion, and anger. However, these emotions, when channeled constructively, can become catalysts for extraordinary determination. The absence of support creates a unique impetus to prove not only to oneself but also to those who failed to act that strength, perseverance, and success are possible even without external validation. Each challenge faced, whether medical, emotional, or logistical, becomes an opportunity to demonstrate capability, resilience, and tenacity. The struggle itself serves as a benchmark, setting the stage for a drive to exceed expectations and redefine what is possible despite adversity. Motivation derived from hardship is distinct because it is deeply personal. It is rooted in lived experience, in the intimate understanding of struggle, and in the conscious choice to transform vulnerability into empowerment. This form of motivation encourages goal setting that is ambitious yet grounded in reality, where every small accomplishment becomes a symbol of triumph over neglect and limitation. The desire to succeed beyond expectations is not simply about external recognition. It is about reclaiming control over one's narrative and demonstrating that past adversity does not dictate future outcomes. The intensity of this drive often manifests in heightened focus, discipline, and a commitment to excellence that might not have been cultivated under more comfortable circumstances. It reinforces self-efficacy, teaching that effort, persistence, and strategic action can produce outcomes independent of others' involvement or approval. Over time, the achievements gained through this motivation provide both tangible and intangible rewards, success, confidence, and the knowledge that resilience and determination can overcome even profound neglect. Moreover, this approach transforms emotional pain into purpose, ensuring that experiences of abandonment or betrayal become a foundation for growth rather than a source of limitation. In essence, using the situation as motivation to exceed expectations converts hardship into empowerment, transforming suffering into action, and demonstrating that personal strength, perseverance, and ambition can redefine the trajectory of life, leaving a lasting impact not only on oneself but also on the perception of those who once doubted or abandoned the individual. The emotional intensity building as the story approaches its climax is a pivotal element in conveying the full weight of the journey from abandonment to empowerment. Throughout the narrative, every moment of pain, neglect, and struggle accumulates, layering experiences of isolation, betrayal, and resilience until they reach a peak where the protagonist's growth and transformation are undeniable. This buildup is not just about dramatic tension, it mirrors the psychological and emotional reality of enduring hardship and gradually emerging stronger. Each instance of neglect or absence from those expected to care compounds the internal conflict, heightening feelings of vulnerability, frustration, and anger. These emotions simmer beneath the surface, fueling introspection and motivating the development of inner strength. Simultaneously, the protagonist begins to recognize patterns of self-reliance, perseverance, and coping that have been forged through necessity, each small victory adding weight to the emotional crescendo. As the story progresses, the contrast between past helplessness and present empowerment becomes sharper, creating a tension that resonates with both the protagonist and the audience. This tension is essential to the emotional impact of the climax because it allows the significance of the eventual response, whether a statement, action, or gesture, to land with maximum effect. The audience, having witnessed the accumulation of struggle, neglect, and self-discovery, is primed to fully appreciate the magnitude of the protagonist's composure, confidence, and assertiveness at the pivotal moment. The intensity also serves to highlight the stakes involved, the emotional cost of abandonment, the psychological resilience required to endure, and the personal triumph that comes from transforming suffering into agency. It is within this heightened state that every reaction, expression, and decision gains added meaning, emphasizing the protagonist's growth and the ultimate assertion of self-worth. The emotional intensity also allows for a deeper connection with the audience, as they can empathize with the vulnerability and root for the triumph, feeling the release of tension alongside the protagonist. The gradual escalation ensures that when the climax arrives, whether it is a forward response, a demonstration of independence, or a moment of recognition from others, its impact is amplified because it is the culmination of every hardship endured, every lesson learned, and every ounce of inner strength cultivated. This carefully built emotional intensity transforms the climax into a powerful, unforgettable statement of resilience, self-empowerment, and vindication. The aftermath, when parents are left speechless and stunned, represents the tangible culmination of a journey defined by endurance, resilience, and personal empowerment. After weeks, months, or even years of neglect, abandonment, and emotional pain, the moment of being witnessed in full strength creates a profound shift in the dynamics of the relationship. Those who once held authority or assumed control through absence are suddenly confronted with the undeniable reality that the individual they failed to support has not only survived, but has grown stronger, more confident, and fully self-reliant. The speechlessness of the parents is not merely a reaction of surprise, it is the manifestation of recognition, guilt, and perhaps a dawning comprehension of the consequences of their inaction. They are forced to face the contrast between the helplessness they once expected to impose and the empowered presence now before them. This moment carries layers of emotional complexity. For the parents, it may evoke regret, shame, or defensiveness. For the individual, it is a quiet vindication, a demonstration that survival and success were achieved independently of the support that was withheld. The stunned silence serves as a mirror, reflecting both the gravity of past neglect and the transformation that neglect inadvertently fostered. It validates the resilience, self-discipline, and emotional intelligence that the individual cultivated in response to abandonment. Importantly, this reaction is not merely about retribution, it is a natural acknowledgement that the power dynamics have shifted. Where once the parents' approval or attention might have been perceived as essential, now their presence or absence is secondary to the strength, agency, and dignity that have been established through lived experience. Observing their speechlessness can reinforce a sense of closure, signaling that the chapter defined by neglect has ended and that the individual has reclaimed control over their life and narrative. It highlights the profound irony that those who sought to undermine or diminish the person's well-being through absence are now confronted with the very evidence of triumph they could not prevent. The aftermath also serves as a testament to the transformative power of adversity, showing that strength, self-worth, and personal victory are not granted by others but forged through perseverance, courage, and determination. In this space, the stunned reaction of the parents is both a subtle acknowledgement and an unspoken testament to the individual's endurance, creating a moment that resonates with empowerment, dignity, and the quiet satisfaction of having turned abandonment into proof of unshakable resilience. The long-term impact of asserting oneself through a concise, powerful response is profound, extending far beyond the immediate moment and shaping personal identity, relationships, and self-perception for years to come. When someone has endured abandonment or neglect, particularly during a period of extreme vulnerability such as serious illness, the act of standing firm and communicating strength with clarity becomes a defining point in their life. This response is not merely about confronting those who failed to provide support, it is about reclaiming agency and demonstrating that personal dignity, self-respect, and resilience are internally derived rather than dependent on external validation. Over time, the memory of that moment reinforces a sense of empowerment, reminding the individual of their capacity to navigate adversity independently and to assert boundaries without compromise. This long-term impact also influences how the person approaches future challenges, instilling confidence that even when faced with neglect, opposition, or skepticism, they possess the internal resources to endure, overcome, and succeed. Relationships are similarly affected, as others witness the strength, composure, and clarity established in that pivotal moment. Friends, extended family, or colleagues may develop a heightened respect for the individual's ability to manage crises with dignity and self-assurance, while those who previously attempted to manipulate, control, or undermine may gain a renewed awareness of the limits of their influence. The forward response, though brief, becomes a touchstone for personal reflection, a symbol of triumph over adversity that can be recalled in moments of doubt or challenge to reinforce resilience and confidence. Its impact is also psychological. It affirms that one can act decisively and assertively without aggression, using precision, restraint, and clarity to convey the depth of experience and strength of character. Additionally, the long-term effects include an enhanced sense of self-awareness and emotional intelligence, as the individual recognizes how carefully considered communication can influence outcomes, shape perception, and assert authority without resorting to confrontation or hostility. Ultimately, the enduring significance of this act lies in its ability to transform a moment of personal vindication into a lifelong source of empowerment. It solidifies the understanding that strength, perseverance, and dignity are cultivated through experience and intentional action, and that even the harshest trials, including neglect and abandonment, can become foundations for unshakable self-confidence and personal growth, leaving a lasting imprint on the trajectory of one's life and sense of self. The lasting empowerment gained from overcoming neglect and responding with strength is a transformative experience that shapes not only personal identity but also one's approach to life, challenges, and relationships. When someone has endured abandonment, especially during a critical and vulnerable time like serious illness, the experience leaves deep emotional scars, but it also creates an opportunity for profound growth and self-realization. Surviving without the support that should have been present forces the development of resilience, self-reliance, and inner courage, qualities that become the foundation of long-term empowerment. Every challenge faced independently, whether navigating medical procedures, enduring pain, or managing emotional turmoil, reinforces the understanding that one can endure, adapt, and thrive even in the absence of external support. This realization is both liberating and validating, as it demonstrates that strength does not need to be granted by others. It is cultivated internally through perseverance, focus, and determination. Responding to neglect with calm, intentional action or a precise statement, such as a forward response, crystallizes this empowerment into a tangible moment that resonates long after it is expressed. The act becomes symbolic of triumph over adversity, signaling that one's identity and worth are self-determined, not dictated by those who failed to provide care. Over time, this empowerment influences how challenges are approached, fostering confidence, strategic thinking, and emotional intelligence. The individual recognizes that difficulties, whether interpersonal, professional, or personal, can be met with composure and clarity, drawing upon the strength honed through past experiences. It also changes the dynamics of relationships, as others witness the resilience and autonomy cultivated through hardship, fostering respect while minimizing the influence of manipulative or neglectful individuals. Psychologically, this empowerment strengthens self-esteem and affirms that personal boundaries, dignity, and agency are non-negotiable, reinforcing a sense of control over one's life and choices. Furthermore, the long-term effects include a heightened awareness of one's own capabilities, the ability to navigate adversity with poise, and the confidence to pursue goals and opportunities without dependency on external validation. Ultimately, the lasting empowerment gained from overcoming neglect transforms past suffering into a source of enduring strength, self-assurance, and clarity, proving that the trials imposed by others can be converted into a lifelong foundation of resilience, independence, and personal triumph, leaving an indelible mark on character and future experiences. The final keynote, which emphasizes the ultimate triumph and transformation following parental neglect, encapsulates the full arc of growth, resilience, and self-realization that emerges from enduring profound abandonment. Experiencing neglect during a critical period such as a serious illness creates a unique crucible in which vulnerability and strength exist side by side, often magnifying both pain and the eventual capacity for endurance. Initially, the absence of care fosters feelings of isolation, despair, and helplessness, challenging the individual's sense of security and self-worth. These experiences, while intensely difficult, force the development of coping mechanisms, self-reliance, and inner fortitude, as survival cannot depend on those who should have been present. The ultimate triumph comes not from external validation or revenge in the conventional sense, but from the conscious recognition that one has navigated extreme adversity and emerged stronger, wiser, and more self-assured. This transformation is marked by the cultivation of personal agency, the understanding that one's actions, choices, and mindset define outcomes more than the presence or absence of others. Every moment of endurance, whether enduring treatments, confronting fear, or managing solitude, reinforces the realization that strength is inherent and can be cultivated even in the harshest circumstances. The culmination of this journey is often symbolized by a decisive act, statement, or response that communicates resilience and autonomy with clarity, leaving a profound impression on those who once failed to provide support. This moment of triumph validates the emotional, physical, and psychological growth that has been achieved independently. Beyond the immediate context, the lessons learned from such adversity have lasting implications. They instill confidence in facing future challenges, reinforce self-respect, and deepen the capacity for empathy and understanding toward others who may face hardship. Relationships are recalibrated as well, with boundaries becoming clearer and dependence on unreliable individuals minimized. Perhaps most importantly, the ultimate triumph solidifies the understanding that past neglect, while painful, does not define identity or limit potential. Instead, it serves as a catalyst for transformation, proving that resilience, determination, and self-awareness can convert suffering into a foundation for lifelong strength and empowerment. The final keynote, therefore, encapsulates the essence of turning adversity into personal victory, demonstrating that the most enduring and meaningful triumph arises not from retribution, but from the unwavering commitment to survive, grow, and thrive despite abandonment, leaving a lasting legacy of courage and self-empowerment. In conclusion, this journey from abandonment, neglect, and profound vulnerability to resilience, empowerment, and self-realization is a testament to the extraordinary strength of the human spirit. It shows that even in the darkest moments, when support is absent and the world seems indifferent, inner courage, determination, and self-reliance can carry a person through unimaginable challenges. Every step of the way, enduring illness alone, facing emotional neglect, cultivating self-worth, and asserting boundaries, has been a building block in the foundation of personal triumph. The ultimate message is clear. Our strength is not defined by those who fail us, but by the perseverance, dignity, and resilience we cultivate within ourselves. By confronting adversity with intentionality, grace, and confidence, we reclaim control over our lives, transforming pain into purpose and suffering into empowerment. As you move forward, remember that every challenge you face is an opportunity to discover your own strength and resilience. Hold on to your courage, trust in your abilities, and never let the absence or neglect of others diminish your value or determination. Your journey is yours to define, and the power to thrive lies within you. Good luck to each of you on your path, and thank you for taking the time to listen, reflect, and embrace the lessons of resilience, perseverance, and self-empowerment. May your courage continue to grow, and may your journey always lead to strength, fulfillment, and unwavering confidence.